the year 2000. Words like malware, phishing, cyber predator, cyber crime, they weren't part of my vernacular. Maybe they were penned by sci-fi or futurists, but now they're part of my conversation. They're part of my conversation with my daughters. I think about them with my business. So today we're going to talk about cybercrime. We're going to talk about it not in terms of the sky falling. We're going to hear some very telling statistics about how serious it is, but we're also going to talk about what we can do to help prevent it. Joining me today are three very special people. Two need no introduction. Sarah and Bryan Baeumler, international TV stars, HGTV, celebrities around the world, their content shown around the world. They own 17 businesses, but we can also relate to them as parents of 4 children and having their own parents. Cybersecurity matters to them. And with them, Adam Evans. He's the Chief Information Security Officer for RBC. Sought after speaker, thought leader, an absolute expert in what we can do to set up the kind of prevention we need to help thwart the kind of attacks that are happening every day. Welcome, everybody.
I'm terrified now.
Sarah and Bryan, I mean, this, it is frightening because we hear about it and stuff, and I'm just curious, when did you start having the conversations as a couple about the sense that people could be peering in? I mean, not lurking out in the backyard, but literally using your computers, your digital devices as almost a Trojan horse to wander in and poke around into your lives.
I mean, I think my concern started, as the kids started to get more involved in social media, and we've seen it. We have a 17-year-old son that is pretty savvy, and not only savvy, but he's pretty disengaged from social and from the internet, and he's focused more on a horse at the moment. We have a 15-year-old daughter that is very engaged in social media that we monitor and attempt to monitor, and we've learned some lessons, and I think had very open conversations with the kids that if you take a photo and send it to someone or post it somewhere, even if you delete it, it exists. It now exists. And you may as well put it on a billboard on the side of the highway because the potential is there for someone to do that. And we have had some very serious conversations with the younger kids as well. And right up to our parents. I
want to get to your parents.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
You're overwhelmed already.
I want to just go home and unplug my modem.
But Sarah, so, your 15-year-old daughter, very involved in social media, but, when I was growing up, my sister had a journal, and it was off limits to her parents, my parents. It was like, that's my journal. Mm-hmm. How do you wander into that world and try to coach her on what is right or wrong when she sort of says, this is my universe, these are the validations that I'm after, these are my friends, these are my likes, stay away? Like, is there any kind of strategy?
Send her a phishing email.
I think there's a challenge, or we're facing, I think, right now, because we have different ages of our kids, and they all interact with social media, and which is the internet in general, in very different ways. And so our conversations have to be different depending on the child and where we think they're going to navigate on the web. So for our 15-year-old daughter, our conversations need to be come from a positive side, from a proactive side, and not from a sense of we're taking your phone, we're checking what you've been doing. So we're trying to, I think, with her, instill things at the earlier stage to sort of just open the conversation, talk about what's wrong, but then also feel like we're putting our trust in her, because there's this fine line as parents that you want to establish that comfort level and that trust. And I don't always believe that taking their phones and saying, okay, weekly I'm going to check what sites you've been on is necessarily the right way to go about it. So I think we're kind of navigating that with each child and their own personality a little bit.
So Bryan, I mean, when my parents first talked to me about creeps and what to watch out, and certainly had that conversation with my sisters, I really entrusted them. They were adults, they had the currency, but today, very often your kids have more digital competency than you do. Mm-hmm. How do you find a way to wander into that conversation with them going, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about?
I don't know if that's possible. I think as soon as your kids are teenagers, and we realize. I think when we had children, I apologized to my parents because I realized, what it was all about. But as teenagers, we get that a lot. I think you don't know what you're talking about. We find out there's apps and there's social platforms that we've never heard of.
Yep.
That all of a sudden all the kids are on and they're sharing. So it really is about that conversation. I think it's similar to when we were younger, the conversation that Mom and Dad had with us about drinking or beer. It's like, if you want to do it, phone me if you're in trouble, but here's what can happen. Explain all the things and leave the door open for the conversation that they feel comfortable coming to us. We've certainly told them if you feel uncomfortable, if there's something you don't know, and there's so much to teach them and protect them from that you almost don't know where to start.
But off camera, you were sharing a story about, one of your daughters, your youngest daughter, I believe, and the promise of getting more followers. I can imagine her eyes getting excited because she's competing with her older sister, and obviously you're a celebrity, and that turned into a tougher conversation, didn't it? It
did. Josephine is 9 and is starting to get active on social media, but it's like, look at my horse and look at my bracelet. There are a lot of things that we would recognize as phishing or a trap or call me now and I'll get you 100,000 followers, and to them that's amazing. So we monitor the younger kids. We have it on our phone and messages pop up and what have you, and there's this interaction of, I'll get you this, I'll get you that, I'll trade you this, oh, where do you live? And it starts to get more and more of a personal conversation. So I'll paraphrase, but I asked him not to communicate with her anymore. And
that nicely, I imagine.
That nicely. I said, do me a favor, and blocked. But then the first thing we did is sat down with Josephine. We explained that this is, they're looking for one of 3 things. They're looking for personal information. They're potentially looking for assets, photos, inappropriate things, or maybe they're looking for money. They're certainly not, they didn't just pick you randomly out of billions of people to assist out of the goodness of their heart. So I think part of it is just educating them to understand that. And it's the same as the phone calls you get with the duct cleaning, or you want a cruise, or you have this or that. It's, all you have to do is, or the CRA. I get a lot of calls from the CRA that if I don't call today, I'm going to jail.
For good reason. You own 17 businesses.
Going to jail.
Yeah. They want my credit card number. I don't know why. There's a lot to navigate.
Adam, you talk about 10 trillion by 2025. That's a massive number. Mm-hmm. Is children a big target? And if so, what should parents be doing to try to create a moat and some level of protection?
So I would say, threat actors are not overly discerning. You do get threat actors, certainly, that are targeting individuals, whether it be elderly people, children. They may have a target set of victims that they want to go after. But Bryan and Sarah, what they just walked through is absolutely the right thing to be doing. It's having the conversation, and that seems to be the hardest part for people to get through. One, because parents are typically coming from an uninformed point of view, right? We are a generation, and collectively we're a generation, that grew up without the internet. Yeah. And we are figuring out the technology as we go. And we've turned into this society where our children are consumers of technology without understanding the pitfalls of that technology. And our parents are trying to get onto the same technology, but there's a healthy level of skepticism there. And the threat actors now they use that information to target them differently. For our parents, it's the CRA scams and it's the grandparent scams where, one of their grandchildren or purported grandchildren calls them up and says, do you know who this is? Yes, it's so-and-so. Well, now I've established an identity with a grandparent and I need you to send money because I've run out of money where I am. Right. And they will send it to an account, and obviously it's a fraudulent or it's a fraud scam. On the children's side of it, I think, there's a couple of interesting stats when I was sort of getting ready for the discussion today. 80% of children across the globe at some point in time will be victimized online, which is an extraordinary number when you think about how interconnected they are today. And 55% of those kids will be exposed to illicit content before they're age appropriate. So it is a place where these things are, they're sitting out there, whether it's individuals reaching out through social media and luring or grooming and starting to contact younger people, but everybody is at risk. And I think that conversation, whether it's your parents, your children, your loved ones, your coworkers, they need to understand the world that we live in. This is a digital world. It is an interconnected world. There are ways that we connect to it. And you have to understand, how do I protect myself while I'm on my phone, my computer, when I'm working from home, when I'm going from my home office to my corporate office? What are the things that I need to be thinking about? And obviously, how do I protect myself against the risks associated with it?
It reminds me of that story or fable of the little Dutch boy trying to stick his finger in a dike that's starting to open up. I mean, there's a lot to worry about. I've heard about the vault. Well, tell me a little bit about what you're doing to at least help clients of your bank even feel somewhat confident that they've got a strategy?
The vault was really, it sort of grew out of conversations that I was having with clients. And every time I'd sit down with a set of clients, it was always, where do I start? And how do I get my journey started? There was an appetite for it, but they didn't understand how the journey started. So we created the Vault, which is, is an interactive page where people can go and get resources about how do I secure my iPhone when I get a new phone, or when I'm setting up my home network, what are the things that I should be thinking about, and just best practices guides about how to consume technology. And it sort of grew out of this, these conversations, and then we said, we think we're sort of onto something with the Vault, and we want to make it a little bit more client ready. And the team has done a wonderful job going and collecting all the information and putting it into a format that's consumable for people. Because if it's technology speak, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But if it's very, very easy to understand, the chances of them adopting it and using it in their daily life, that starts them on their journey, and a safer person at home is going to be a safer client when they're banking with us.
Is the Vault only available to RBC clients?
No, the Vault is available to anybody.
Where would we find the Vault?
At rbc.com/cyber. There's a portal created there for educational materials, and the Vault is one of those things that you can download and use in your personal life at home.
So as we wrap up the show, I just want to give a big thank you, first of all, Sarah and Bryan, for coming up and sharing a lot of intimate thoughts about your family, your businesses, and your celebrity. And Adam, always it's a pleasure because you do have a vault of knowledge. I can understand why rbc.com/cyber is where the vault is. So thank you all for being part of it.